Thank you, everybody, for joining today's webinar. We're excited to share with you a little bit more about Onshape and how it's really just revolutionizing the way that engineers and designers are conducting their work. And, Onshape is, a product that, we're looking to help eliminate a lot of design gridlock for you, sharpen your team collaboration, and just get your work done in a faster pace. And here at EAC, we are a partner with PTC, a platinum partner, and we're going to be taking you through some of the capabilities that how we're informing other engineers on ways that they can collaborate more efficiently and with their design processes. And so today we have one of our technical account managers, Bill Schlund, on the call, and he's going to be taking you through an actual demo of the product. I appreciate everyone joining here. I hope you take something away from today's call, and we're eager to share what we have. And without further ado, Bill, I'll have you take it over.
All right, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I am the aforementioned Bill Schlund, and I'm going to talk to you today about a new product development system called Onshape. I wanted to start doing that, talking with a couple of PowerPoints to kind of set a baseline, and then we'll get into working with the software. But what we have here is an example of a typical small company. We have a number of designers or engineers that are developing a product. And the one thing that we all want to do as designers is to work fast, to be able to innovate, and to be efficient. And everything below this line are things that are going to keep those people from obtaining those three goals. So first of all, the first thing we have to do is load software, right? We load CAD software on our workstations. And then we can think about PDM clients and VPNs and FTP servers and things like that. Once we have all that set up, then we can actually start creating some files. So we create our files, but then we also want to collaborate. So we want to exchange information not only between ourselves, but with other people in the company. So when we do that, we basically are taking copies of the things that we've made, and we're distributing those in a variety of different ways. Could be email, could be Dropbox. We could maybe get a little more sophisticated and say, well, let's use a file server and let's put all our information at least in one common area. But then you have to start thinking about, am I overwriting something when I'm putting it there? Am I getting the latest version? So we could even get more sophisticated and say, well, let's get a PDM system. At least that way I'll know I'm getting the latest version. But the thing is, we're still making copies. When I check something out of a PDM system, I'm checking out a copy. And if we distribute things around, we're just distributing more copies around. And then some people say, well, let's do kind of a partial cloud solution. And let's just kind of push our things into the cloud. But all we're doing is pushing copies into the cloud. And then we have to start distributing those. So all these things make our life a little bit slower, a little less efficient. And the thing is that this is the way it's been for probably the last 35 years, except for the cloud part. But this is really the way that CAD works. And this is the way that product development works. And it doesn't have to be that way. And that's really why we're here today, is to talk about a different way of doing things. So Onshape is a unified cloud solution. It's built on the PTC Atlas platform. And what it is a totally different kind of architecture. The data and the tools are all in the cloud. There's nothing to install. There's no hardware. Because of that, your IT costs can be substantially lower. Its capabilities enable users to fundamentally work faster. There's real-time commenting and collaboration woven into the software, and it runs on Windows, Mac, Linux, Chromebooks, iPhones, iPads, Android. This unique capability has several different aspects to it. There's CAD, there's data management, bills of materials, security, apps, things like that. So I'm going to talk about some of these before we get into working with the software. So let's talk about CAD to begin with. So Onshape is has CAD capabilities in it, which allows us to create parts, assemblies, drawings. We can do configurations. We have standard libraries that we can access information or commonly used parts. It also is a multi-part or a multi-body modeling system. So this type of architecture we can take advantage of a lot to make us more efficient and to just do things in a unique way. Also, we can create components in context. We can create sheet metal parts. And there's also the ability to create custom features. In addition to that, now that we've created some geometry, we need to start thinking about managing that data. So now we can have capability in Onshape so that, first of all, basically the way that works is everything we do is preserved. We can go back to any point in time and look at that and start using that going forward if we want to. So everything is preserved. We can create versions, which are just moments in time that we would want to maybe refer back to at some particular point, or maybe that's a fork in the road where we want to go off in a different direction. Speaking of that we can create branches and start developing things in a different direction. Should we like those changes, we can merge that back in with the rest of the geometry that we've been creating. As I mentioned before, there's all these moments in time. We can go to any 2 points in time and compare those, not only graphically, but feature by feature. If we have data management, we also want to make sure that we can work with that information and control it in workflows. So we have a built-in release management system as part of Onshape. There's workflow there for basically when we create new geometry, new products, it comes under the heading of in progress. But then that can be released or rejected, right? This is the built-in workflow that comes with the software. So with that, let's take a look at what Onshape looks like. Here I've logged into Onshape. This is kind of like my home page that I get to. We can see these are recently worked on products that I've worked with. Here we have a variety of different folders that either I have created or that I have access to. If we look along the top, there's a capability here for an app store. So we can get additional capabilities like finite element analysis, manufacturing, maybe real-time rendering or photorealistic rendering. We can get that from the App Store. We can also go to the Learning Center. This gives us the capability of hundreds of different movies, self-paced tutorials, webinars, the things that are going to help us get up to speed in using this software and this system as quickly as possible. It also has a concept of users. So you can see here, this is me, Bill, and there's a picture of me, but it has things like my user account. So this would be my user account. I can set it up and I could say, these are the default types of units that I want to have in my account. Again, I can always change them later, but out of the box, this is how I want it set up. Most people who use Onshape have come from another CAD system. So we can customize the mouse behavior to behave like the CAD system that you're coming from. And then finally, there's this capability called a shortcut toolbar. And basically, I can put all the frequently used commands on a pop-up menu that pops up right at my mouse, so I don't have to move and go up to the top of the screen or the side of the screen to get particular commands. It'll be right there at my mouse tip. And that makes it really efficient to start creating and working with things very fast. In addition to that, there's also the concept of a company. So here's my company, here are all the people in it that are currently working, and it has the thought of roles. So we can put people in different roles. Are they administrators, engineers, managers, suppliers, or whatever? And then again, as I mentioned, there's the built-in workflow for release. This is what that looks like. In addition to that, there's also a part numbering capability here. So I can put in a prefix, how many characters do I want in my part numbering, and then I can get a preview of what part number for a part or an assembly or a drawing or file will look like. So let's go back and take a look at sort of my home page again. And one of the things I could do, kind of speaking of the data management aspect of this, if I wanted to look for something, I can just go to the pull down. I can search by the type of thing it is. Is it a part? Is it a document? Is it an assembly? I could say, let's see what state that it's in, right? And we could say maybe things that are released. So basically, I'm going to say, let's look for anything out there that is in a released state. It goes out and searches and comes back and gives me a list of all the things that have been released. We can see I have different drawings, different components, things like that. These are all been released. So lots of different ways of getting at our information. Let's start to work with a design that we're going to be working with today. So I'm going to click on this, and what it does is it brings me into what's called a part studio. And a part studio isn't a file. Part studio is basically a grouping of information that's going to help me develop this particular product. So I can take a look at what's in this Part Studio and give you a little introduction of kind of the philosophy behind it. First of all, the Part Studio allows me to create geometry. So I can create parts, assemblies, drawings like that. But I can also create a variety of different types of information that help support this product development. So here you can see I have downloaded a couple different JPEGs of an artist's rendition of this product that they want us to develop. I actually even have a Word doc in here of the requirements that are needed for this. So what we want to do is start working with this particular component here. Now what I've done is I've just kind of come in and said, let's take one of those JPEGs, we put it on a plane, and then I started to sketch over the top of this plane to create kind of the outline of the product that we want. So in this particular case, what I'm going to do is say, there's a little lip on the outside of this. So I'm just going to say, let's just create kind of a box to take into account that lip. And we'll say it's maybe 1/8 of an inch. Let's take this guy and we'll move our 1/8 of an inch over here. So this is our sketch so far. I'll say, okay, that kind of is taking into account everything. I'm going to start to bring this into the 3D world. So I'm going to pick on the different sections of this sketch that I made. And there's like 3 different sections here. And I'm going to say, let's go in and revolve that maybe about the center line here. So now I have some 3D geometry that I'm working with. This is a good start. The nice thing about working with a multi-body modeler, and I'm going to say, let's turn off our sketch here, is I can start off with a big group of geometry here, and then I can decide how I want to slice and dice this into how many parts that I want to have. So in this particular case, I'm going to say, let's go in and let's kind of split this, and we'll split it maybe right along this face. So you notice here there was 1 part, now there's 2. So all the features that I create will be up here. The parts that I create are down here. And since it's a multi-part system, now I have 2 parts. Another thing that I could do is say, let's do the same with the bottom part. We'll say, let's take that and we'll split it along this face here. So now I have 3 parts. We can see them listed out here. And these are 3 unique parts. I can make drawings for each one of these. I can include them in different assemblies. They are standalone parts. One of the things I might want to do is start naming these. So the top part, I'll just call it top, I guess. The second one here, we could just say, we'll just call it like base. And then finally, the middle part, I guess I'll cleverly call that like middle. I'll cleverly call this one middle. So now we have our 3 parts. I can start to think about maybe applying different mass properties to them. These are, like I said before, unique parts. One of the things I'm going to want to do is, let's say we want to maybe color these a little bit. So I'm just going to go to the top part and we'll say, let's make him red. Let's go to the base part. We'll make him kind of a dark color. And then maybe the middle part, let's make it kind of a lighter color, and let's turn on transparency. So now we have our 3 parts. We have them kind of colored the way they want. They're still solid parts, but and technically this is not an assembly. It's just 3 bodies that happen to be in the same place. To make an assembly, it's really simple. I just go over to assembly and I'm going to say, let's insert what I've been creating. I can insert them one at a time and align faces and align centers and things like that. But the thing is I can bring them all together. Since I've already modeled them all together, I might as well just place them all together all at once. So now I have my 3 parts in an assembly. And we can see over here in the assembly tree, we have those 3 components. If we have an assembly, we also have a bill of material. So I can come over here to our bill of material. Here are the different columns. I can add or remove any types of columns that I want. I can rearrange those. So here I just have the names of the parts, what state they're in. Remember we talked about in progress or released and their quantities. This bill of material is the exact same one that's going to be used in a drawing. So speaking of a drawing, I haven't really created one yet. So let's go in and say, create a drawing. I'm going to use a custom format that I made. There's a bunch of formats that come out of the box with this, but I'm going to say, let's use my custom format that I created. And this has my company logo in it. Now, the formats that we create, they could automatically place the different views for us. So this one's pulling out the date and information from the part. But I'm going to say, I'm going to not do really a drawing at this point of these individual parts. Let's use our assembly. So I'll just come in here and say, let's place maybe the front view over here. I could place the top view maybe up here. Come over, maybe an isometric view right there. And then maybe we'll do a section view. Place a section right here, kind of move that. We'll put the section right there and move the view maybe right here. So now we have a cross section of our part. The thing is, you can see it's solid geometry, right? It's all solid. So we'll have to work on that a little bit. But now that I'm here, I can actually start going in and start creating some dimensions. So I have all the capabilities certainly here to create any kind of ISO, ANSI standard type of documentation. When I put a dimension down here, I can come in and determine maybe how many decimal places it is. Do I want to put on a tolerance? Let's take a look at maybe what the tolerance would be. We could say plus or minus 50 thousandths. And so now we have that placed. I could also come in and say, you know, maybe start doing some geometric toleраncing. Let's put a datum maybe right here where these two parts fit together. So now we could come in and say, let's just kind of move him off to the side right there. So now we have a datum A, and I can continue on with the documentation. Now, one of the things that I also want to make note of is that I can come in and put in, you know, kind of predefined tables. So I'm going to bring in, you know, our revision block here. So as this evolves through time, we can see the different revisions. And since I had a bill of material, I'm going to come in and just place our bill of material. We could say, you know, let's just place it right here. So here's our BOM. And obviously, if we have a bill of material, we're going to want to put call outs on the components that are there. So I can do that right here real simply. And again, this is all tied back to the bill of material, obviously. Let's get rid of this guy. And we'll put in our final one. We'll line them up right there. All right, so now we got a good start on the drawing. Let's go back to our part studio where we had our components here and kind of start to develop these a little bit more. So I'm going to start thinking about the base a little bit and some of the things I might want to do with that. So I'm going to pick on this kind of to remove it and say, let's put maybe a round on this edge, and we'll make it, you know, 1/4 inch. Then maybe we can shell this out by kind of the same amount. And so that could be kind of our base part. Turn on the middle part. One of the things I can do with this is I can kind of isolate it. So I can still see the other components, but I'm working on basically my middle part. And with this one, what I want to do is say, you know, let's kind of shell that out. Even though we can see through it, we saw from the cross section that it is solid geometry. So here I'm just hollowing that out. And we'll turn on the rest of our parts. And so now we've got really a good head start on our assembly. This top part is going to be a little bit more complex. And at a time like this, I'm going to actually ask for help. I'm just going to reach out to somebody and say, hey, can you help me with some of this? So I'm going to actually put a comment on this particular top part. And I'm going to address this to somebody in the company. So I can just say ampersand and start to type in his name. I look through the company. I got a couple of Nicks out here. This is the Nick I want to work with. I'll say, you know, can you help with this? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign this to Nick. So we have the concept kind of assigning tasks to people to do different things, maybe to look at a release request or something like that. In this case, I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to send that to Nick. I'm going to say, let's assign it to him. What happens is it says, now you're going to give him access to what you've been working on. I said, sure. So Nick's going to get an email. And in the email, he clicks on the hyperlink, says, Bill's asking you to work on something. So here is when Nick clicks on that hyperlink, it brings him to Onshape and he logs in. And you can see here's what I asked him to do. So if he clicks on that, he can see this little chopper design. So he's going to select on that, and he's brought in to the exact same model that I'm working on. This is what sets us apart, is we're working on the same model at the same time. And he's looking at this and saying, okay, I can see the little comment down here that you're concerned with this top part. Okay, I understand that. Here's my design. I'm going to actually, let's move my screen over a little bit so we can see both these guys at the same time. So Nick's looking at this and he says, okay, let's take a cross section through this thing. Said, oh, geez, yeah. Okay, I got some work to do, right, with this top part. It's just a big blob right now. And what exactly do you want to do? What do you want me to do with it, I guess he would be saying. And what he can do is actually look exactly when I move my screen around, zoom in and zoom out, he sees the exact same thing. So I zoom in. So this really aids in the communication between here. But what I'm saying to him is that, well, I'm going to put some components in here. So I'm going to basically put a hole, maybe right in the center of this guy. And when I do this, when I say I'm finished with this hole, he sees it on his screen as well, because we're working on the same part. And he goes, okay, I understand what you're doing. You want me to work on this part and, you know, kind of help develop it. And I could say, yeah, sure. Do you have any ideas of what you want to do on this? And he could say, yeah, I've got some ideas. Let's go in, and he's going to attach, let's attach an image and say, add a grip. He'll add this to our conversation. And again, obviously I see it as well. And it's like, yeah, that's a good idea. You know, have somebody kind of hold on to this a little bit better. I like that. So let's go ahead with it. Now, before you do that, what I want you to do is to, I'm going to make a version first. So our history, everything that I've done so far is preserved, right? I can go back to any point in time, but I'm going to create a version at this point, and I'm just going to call it before Nick, right? Before he gets his hands on it. And so we can look in our history over here, and we can see this is everything, all the things that we've done so far. And like I said, I can go to any one of these points and start working with that. But here's our before Nick. And what I really want to use with this is I'm going to branch off and let him go in a different direction to put his unique capabilities to work. And if I like it, I'm going to include it. And if I don't, then I'll just keep going with it. So with this, I'm going to say, let's create a branch. And we're going to give this, have Nick work on this. So this branch I might call, ECO-007. And we create this branch. So you can see the branch has been created there. I'll say, okay, Nick, I want you to work on that branch because I'm going to be working on the main idea here that we've been working on and basically creating an assembly and doing some things like that. So Nick says, okay, that's great, but all I have are viewing capabilities. These are all the commands for viewing things, panning, zooming, cutting cross sections, things like that. Can you help me out? Give me some permissions. I said, sure. So now I can go in and say, I want to edit Nick's permissions and allow him to edit this. And I just say, let's update that. So all Nick has to do is refresh his browser. So now he'll see that he has all the commands that I had in mind right up here. So now he has the ability to start working with this geometry. Now, one of the things he's going to do is he's going to go in and set this to be working on this ECO that I've created for him. And now that he's here, he can start creating some of the geometry. So the first thing he's going to do is maybe go in and say, let's remove some material from here, kind of make that the cutout that we want to do, and kind of remove some. So this will allow somebody to kind of hold on this and hold it in place. It won't slide out of your hand. So that's a good start. The next thing is maybe he wants this to kind of line up with the rest of this out here. Remember, I added this little lip over at the very beginning. So he can use some non-parametric. So you notice all the parametric commands are here. There's also non-parametric or direct modeling type of commands and things that we can do here as well. So he's going to use something called a move face. But he can just pick on a face and say, let's offset it by that 1/8 of an inch that we used before. So now it lines up perfectly with the other one. And then really the only thing he needs to do at this point is go in and say, let's kind of shell this out or hollow it out. You'll pick on here, say, okay. So now he's been working on his part. It's come along pretty well. He can send me back a comment saying, it's ready to go. In the meantime, I have to be working on my assembly. So I go back to the assembly we have here. Right now, the way things stand, I brought these parts in and I can just kind of drag them around wherever they are in space. And what I'm going to do is actually make a mechanism out of this, right? We're going to have a plunger that's going up and down, chopping up the food in this food processor. So what I want to do is kind of keep these things from moving around. I'm just going to pick on the base part and I can say fix that. Then I'll just grab the other parts and say group those together, basically group them all to the fixed part, so now nobody moves. At this point, I can start bringing in the other geometry that I want. I could create it, but in this case, I have some existing geometry. So I'm just going to say, let's insert an assembly from somewhere else. And I'm going to have to go and browse for it. And I could say, maybe something that I've worked on recently. Here's the blade with the handle. So I'm going to say, let's bring that in. We're going to put this in our design. So I'm just going to place it over here for right now. And you'll notice up here, there's all kinds of different types of joints that we can put together to make a mechanism. There's pin joints, there's revolutes, there's planar, there's ball joints. What I'm going to use is a cylindrical joint. I'm going to just go in and say, because it is kind of a cylindrical representation, I'll just say, put these two together right at this point. So now this can move up and down, and I can put some limits on it, right? So the height that it's at right now, I could say is perfect, right? How far down do I want it to go? We could say maybe 1.5 inches. And then I don't want it to really rotate at all, right? I don't need it to rotate. So I just do that, say, okay. So what I've done is I've actually created a mechanism so I can move this up and down, right? And I can animate this as well. But so now this is a real mechanism that I have here. Going back to my part, we can see our assemblies here. Now Nick is ready with his, right? So he's created this, and let's kind of turn on our middle part. But that's what he's created. So I can come back over here and say, well, let's look at what Nick did. So I can come and turn that on, take a look at it, and say, yeah, it looks good. So I can include that work with mine. I'm going back to my design, and I'm just going to say, let's merge in the work that Nick has done. You notice it's automatically been added to what I have here. If I go to the drawing and take a look at it here, we'll see the drawing, but an interesting thing, if parts get not exactly lined up with what we're seeing here, this little yellow button comes up saying update the drawing. If I do that, watch what happens. First thing that gets updated is the bill of materials. 2 of those parts automatically got added in here, right, that we've added in here. And now we can see all our views updating, and now we can continue working on our drawing. Just to finish up, this one part that Nick has developed, we might want to release that. So I'm just going to come over here to that top part. Because it has a longer lead time, I'm just going to say, let's release that. And here's the part. It'll be revision A. I'm going to use our part numbering system to automatically number that. And then I could say the name of this release. It could be ECO, the part number. Who's going to approve it? I'm not going to have Nick do it. I'll do it myself. Since I didn't model it, I can use that. I can include some observers or things like that, and I'll just say submit that. So now I have a task, just like I gave to Nick a task. I have a release task to review that release. So here is that ECO for my release. If I select on that, I can see the top part that we want to get released. I can say, let's review that. Again, I just got done looking at it, so I can say, this is good. Let's release that part. So you notice now my task is empty, and I've done everything that I needed to do. I can go back to our documents over here, and one of the things we'll notice in the history is when we initially released that, it puts a little triangle next to this ECO of releasing it. And then now that it is officially released, I'll kind of refresh that. And now it's a filled in triangle, which we said is an official released part. And again, just to finish things up here, if I go back to the drawing and I update that, we'll see that it'll add the part number there for the top. And I can continue then releasing the other ones. But now we got this one, longer lead time. We can send this to the mold guy and he can get this all updated for us. So that kind of brings us to our conclusion for this particular portion. I could have also accessed this using my cell phone, right? An interesting thing about cell phones is that 1 out of every 6 users that access Onshape are doing it on their cell phone. And it's not because they like working on little itty bitty screens, but it's because they want to take place, or they can now very easily. You always have your cell phone with you in maybe a change request or to review something or take part in a review process or something like that. So very, very easy to access this software. Everything I did here today kind of goes back to those 3 tenets that I talked about earlier. It allowed me to work faster, to innovate, and to be a lot more efficient. So you've probably heard, like I have, that we need to get everybody on the same page. The first question is, who's everybody? Is it everybody in my team, everybody in my company, or is it everybody that needs to touch this in order to get this product done? And that's what Onshape helps you do, is let everybody on the same page. So sorry I did go over, but Anthony, I will roll that back to you.
No problem, Bill. One question popped in. The question is whether or not the approval, basically like the workflows for releasing and approving a part, is that built into every users, or is that something extra that has to be added on, or only admins can buy into?
Good question. Yes, that workflow is built in. There is a higher level of capability with Onshape where you can create and customize workflows as well.
Okay. All right. And that's all the questions we have for now. If anybody does have any additional questions, I encourage you to reply to any of the messages.